Everyone. Welcome to Housing 2.0. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to Housing 2.0. And if you've attended one of our seminars or workshops or action groups, welcome back. We're embarking on year 5 of the program. Yeah, year 5. My name is Mike Calignan, and I'm the Housing 2.0 Program Manager. And if at any point you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via the chat box or by email. I'm going to put my email into the chat box in just a little while. Now, I am joined today by the creator and teacher of the Housing 2.0 content, Sam Rashkin. That content that we're talking about is based largely on his latest book, Housing 2.0, A Disruption Survival Guide. The full program was established to help empower you, our building professionals, to design and construct higher performance, healthier, more sustainable homes at a fraction of the cost. Now, before he did all that, he had something to do with the Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready Home programs. Maybe you've heard of those. Sam's going to lead us through today's seminar, and he's also going to address your questions at the end. Now, before we get started, we have to recognize our sponsors. The first is Panasonic Healthy Indoor Living Solutions. They're helping builders across the country differentiate themselves with powerful, code-compliant, and cost-effective indoor air quality solutions that provide a safer environment for home buyers. And we also have LG with us. They are a leading proponent of the electrification movement, and they're proud to pave the way with arguably the broadest portfolio of home electrification products. From air-to-air and air-to-water heat pumps for the HVAC systems to water heaters, clothes dryers, washer-dryer combos, even advanced energy storage systems, EV chargers, and super efficient appliances, including the industry's first Energy Star certified induction cooktop. LG's innovation and technology will help us promote decarbonization and collectively create a better life for all. Now, for those of you who might have been with us before, we're going to traverse through 2025 a little differently than prior years. Instead of doing a couple series, one in the spring, one in the fall, we're covering 11 different topics throughout the course of the year. That means you'll have a new Housing 2.0 seminar to enjoy every month except July. Stay tuned to your inboxes for all the upcoming topics, dates, and times. Now, during the course of today's presentation, you can submit questions for Sam. Simply use the questions box inside the GoToWebinar control panel. I'm going to look over those questions and give those to Sam after his presentation. All right, everybody ready to go? All right, let's do this. I now hand it over to Mr. Sam Rashkin.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike. Welcome, everyone. Like Mike, incredibly grateful for really great sponsors that make this program possible, Panasonic and LG. So let's move into today's topic. This is a new approach, as Mike mentioned. And this year we have in our core seminar series 5 rethinking seminars. Today is Rethinking Climate Action. And I think with the new sheriff in town and new administration and our keen awareness that the world is different right now, this is a really important topic I think we all need to address. So I'm going to first set the stage for the 5 seminars we're doing this year on rethinking. Today we're doing Rethinking Climate Action. April 3rd, we'll do Rethinking Scaling Systems Built Homes. May 15th, Rethinking the Perfect Wall. September 11th, Rethinking Affordable Housing. November 6th, Rethinking the HERS Index Score. As Mike mentioned, we also have a leadership discussion series where thought leaders come in and we really address how we address big changes that are happening. And we also have a very important series on how to avoid mistakes getting to zero. So stay tuned for all that. Let's jump into today's topic. First, a disclaimer. I'm not suggesting taking our foot off the climate action pedal. So there's a lot of content today. I don't want anyone to assume that's what's being suggested. I am suggesting we leverage opportunities to be smarter scaling climate action. When we look at how we have progressed and the situation we're in today, I think there are opportunities to just be more effective scaling and addressing the great urgency we have. Now, next, I'm not suggesting I'm not suggesting that my recommendations all work. I'm not delusional that everything I say today absolutely is the answer. What I am saying is that the recommendations should be starting conversation. I'm looking at things a new way. I'm trying to rethink how we really address the new forces acting on climate action, and that's all I'm doing. So don't get upset if some things make sense or don't make sense. This is just starting the conversation. What we'll do today is 4 key things. One was I always review the Housing 2.0 program background very quickly so you understand the context where I'm coming from. Second, why climate urgency now? Third, why climate urgency is not being heard. And then last, listening-based climate action. Same outcome, different message. So moving into the background for Housing 2.0, it all begins for me understanding that housing is the ultimate consumer product. Nothing comes close. And when we think about a consumer product, we have to be focused on the whole product experience. And research from national lab surveys and studies show, when you look at where we spend time every day, at residences, at work, dining, outdoors, vehicles, other indoor locations, we are in our home nearly 70% of the time. Now, this was done 2001, this particular survey. I'm going to submit probably post-COVID, it's getting closer to 75% where we spend our time. Home is where life happens. This is the product we have to get right. So that's the foundation for Housing 2.0. And why I pursue this program so much is my passion for housing. The reason I exist is I'm about homes where life happens better. And in terms of providing what we can do to solve that opportunity, I provide a framework that has fundamentals for consistently delivering a better user experience at lower cost. Now, my life is focused on high performance, low carbon housing, but I recognize that will not hold up the housing user experience stool. It's a 5-legged stool. You also have to optimize community, design, quality, and the sales experience, particularly service. So this is a holistic concept to optimizing the product where we spend over 70% of our lives. And how we do that is with 160 best practices. And the way that kind of parcels out is, first thing we do is recognize we have 2 business models. One is the typical lowest first cost business model most builders apply. The second is a Housing 2.0 business model, which is an optimization for the user experience. And so the first step is in the process is to invest in the experts and special features for sure thing user experiences. Experiences we know every homeowner would want to have. It takes extra costs for experts and features, make those investments. Go beyond first cost. But the secret sauce is step 2. This is where we optimize our total cost. And we have all these tools to extract tremendous savings, right sizing versus excessive space, simple versus complexity, integrated systems versus non-integrated systems, lean design and lean build versus excessive waste, and enhanced productivity versus lack of productivity. All these tools can really extract tremendous cost savings, and at the same time, because of this focus on user experience, wind up with added value. Better experiences, better wellness, lower ownership cost. And when we calculate those out through Housing 2.0, we'll come up with 30 to 70% greater value with this business model. So that's why this is a completely different, unique approach to taking housing to the next level. And the important thing is it's backed up by a lot of data. Here's one point I'll show you where one builder took one experience design with a obsessive focus on just extracting all the savings possible from every design decision. And this was Walsh Construction in a multifamily housing project in Portland, Oregon, and achieved 24% lower cost than the prior project on the same site, building very similar housing. So it's amazing all these outcomes that can be achieved. And this is the basic resource, Housing 2.0. So just so you know where the context where I'm coming from. So let's go into why climate urgency has been such a critical topic for so many of us to focus our lives. And the first thing I want to do is talk about predicting the visible future and hard versus soft trends. And I love this basic concept from a book, Flash Foresight by Daniel reverse. You can predict the future accurately. You just have to leave out the parts you can be wrong about. That's all you got to do. And the way you do that, the key is knowing how to distinguish between a soft trend and a hard trend. A soft trend is a specific a color or counter preference that might be in vogue at this time. A hard trend is that housing prices are going up. And it's a very big difference in terms of understanding and planning for the future when you parcel out the hard trends. It's about knowing and recognizing certainty. And when we look at climate and we look at hard trends, we realize we're in uncharted territory. When we look at virtually every curve for every major Earth system affected by human activity, they all seem to have a similar curve. This is work done by Stockholm Resilience Center in Sweden, and essentially they identified 12 Earth systems, and all of them virtually are going in this very similar curve in what they call the Great Acceleration. The magnitude and frequency of change indicate the Earth is entering a new geologic epoch, the Anthropocene. So this is their finding, and I can take all 12 of these curves for carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, stratozone, surface temperatures, ocean acidification, all these Earth trends, and they all look basically some variation of this curve, of a exponential growth curve. And so the reason why we're so concerned is the reason this represents uncharted territory is scientists can identify a planetary boundary condition where once that Earth system exceeds that level, then it gets really difficult to reverse back and mitigate these impacts that can really hurt human life on the planet. So we have a whole bunch of these Earth systems and metrics that are exceeding the planetary boundary conditions, CO2 in the atmosphere, biodiversity, deforestation, biogeochemical flows, all those have exceeded the planetary boundary condition. And you have a whole bunch of these Earth system metrics right at the cusp of the planetary boundary level. Ocean acidification, freshwater use, atmospheric aerosol, novel entity chemicals, all those things are just sitting right there at the boundary. So over the last 50 years, we have a hard trend. We've seen the most rapid transformation of the human relationship with the natural world in the history of our humankind. And so that's why we feel it's urgent. And then the hard trends reveal themselves every time we measure the data. It just reveals these curves are real. So this is a chart showing global land and ocean temperature anomalies. So you have the degree centigrades compared to the industrial age, 1900 to 2000, before and after. And you see basically that we're right now, the global land and ocean temperature anomaly is about approaching almost 1.3 degrees centigrade above those the pre-industrial level. And so we're rapidly going to a point where we're dangerously close to the 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial level threshold needed to avert the worst impacts of climate change, and which we already are experiencing on a regular basis. We don't have to speak about the wildfires in Los Angeles, the hurricanes that occurred in North Carolina and Florida, and we can keep going through the laundry list of all the horrific climate events that are happening. At the same time, on this curve, we can map the carbon levels, the global atmospheric CO2, and we see it basically tracking these temperature anomalies in lockstep. So today, we've exceeded the 400 part per million level of CO2 in the atmosphere. That also is supposed to exceed the planetary boundary conditions. And again, all the alarms going off, we have a climate crisis. On top of that, the evil twin of global warming is ocean acidification. Over a third of the carbon that's emitted in the atmosphere is absorbed by the oceans. They keep getting hotter and more acidified. Aragonite is the main measuring tool to measure the acidification. And basically 150 billion metric tons of carbon is absorbed by the world's seas in the last 200 years. and it's threatening fragile, finite marine life and food security and livelihoods, local economies, global economies. This is just a huge threat. It's that evil twin that we don't talk about as much as the atmospheric temperatures. And we have the visual evidence as well. 1991, this was the polar ice that was on the surface, and then we fast forward 25 years or so, we see the shrinkage. From this to this, visually, we see the hard trend. We see the warming and the melting of the ice. 3 times faster sea level rise estimated in the next 30 years compared to the past 100 years. 3 times faster in the next 30 compared to the last 100 years. So all these hard trends compound. And similarly, biodiversity is another one. We look and measure the percent increase in extinctions and how that's happening. And again, in lockstep with when the industrial age happens, we see the exponential curve kick in. And all these species are experiencing tremendous impacts on their livelihood or on their existence. One study done at Tufts University, 30 to 50% of species going extinct by 2050. And this is 1,000 to 10,000 times faster than the normal background rate, which you see in the dotted line at the bottom of the curve. So we're just losing species at an incredible rate. And what you don't even see on here, for instance, is other extinctions like we're worried about, like bees, which are needed to cultivate crops, and their populations are dropping exponentially faster as well. So that, we're just losing biodiversity, which all the scientists claim are critical to the planet's well-being. And then, just what's driving all this probably goes back to human population. And, it correlates the explosion in growth to the availability of fossil fuels. That's when it just goes up vertically. The first billion humans took 300,000 years. The 5th and 6th billion only took 12 years. That's how fast human population is growing. And, the logic just follows. This population growth correlates to the exponential growth in carbon emissions, and the exponential growth in carbon emissions correlates to the exponentially greater risk to Earth systems we just discussed. And finally, therefore, minimizing risk to Earth systems correlates to reducing carbon emissions exponentially. So this is just why it's so urgent. And the last thing I'll say about this hard trend is the hard trend in scientists converging and having consensus that this is happening. It's being driven by this human activity. And I always go crazy when we have countering scientists on various shows who will give the opposing point to climate threats and climate risk. When we have 97% of climate change is happening in human cause, all we need to do anytime these alternate views are being expressed is just put this graph on the screen. This is, you can always find people who can be motivated to have this countering point, but when you have 97% of scientists agreeing, this is a hard trend. So clearly climate's urgent, but for some reason, the message is not being heard. So this is really the conundrum. If the sky's on fire or everything is going to collapse on us, it seems to get everyone numb to taking action. So let's talk about this and why is it not being heard? I'm going to start with this concept of well-being, and there are 3 metrics that were used for one study about well-being. Life expectancy, which is a likelihood of a long and healthy life. Education, which was the degree of access to knowledge based on enrollment in school and educational degree attainment. And then median earnings, financial earnings, the standard of living for full and part-time workers. So those are 3 metrics, and 3 different maps for each one of these metrics were developed, mapping well-being for life expectancy, education index, median personal earnings. And in each map, the darker the color gets, the better the well-being, the lighter the color, the less the well-being. And one map was done to create a overall kind of human development index for all 3 well-being factors. And you can see this is what it looks like. And again, like the other maps, the darker the color, the better the well-being, the lighter the color, the worse the well-being. And what's interesting is you look at the areas between where you have low well-being and high well-being, and it approximates a 2 times gap difference in well-being from the lowest to highest regions. So there's a huge gap in well-being being experienced in this country. People are living different lives, different life experiences, depending where you are. And what I did next was I just kind of mapped these areas so I can use them for superimposing on other maps. And I went and looked and collected other maps like this 2024 political map of how people voted. And if I superimpose those well-being areas, well-being was best, it should really jump out at you that how much blue and dark blue is in the areas of well-being. And even the areas of well-being that have a fair amount of red, there's a big blue epicenter that's probably driving the well-being performance in that region. And so what's really important here is this correlation between areas of high well-being and some support for climate protection leadership. You know, the areas where you have well-being, people tend to vote for leadership that prioritize climate and take action on climate. And areas that don't have well-being, they vote the other way. And another way to see this is by looking at maps of climate change deniers. The simplest one for me to pull out was this one, which state by state degree of climate denial. The darker the blue, the least denial. As you move to dark and darker reds, it gets the most denial. And it's about a 6 times gap between the areas with least and most climate denial. And when I superimpose, again, the areas of wellness again, it's again should jump out that that there's a high correlation between areas of high well-being and states with the lowest rate of climate deniers. So it leads to a hypothesis for me where people are experiencing vastly worse health, education, and earnings. It's incredibly challenging to earn this support for climate policies when it's advocated by leadership they believe have ignored their well-being for past 50 to 75 years. Governments and institutions have failed them. And what happens as a result is that fear and blame become much easier to hear than save the planet when you're underserved. And they're chronically underserved populations. And we're at a point where the disparity in wellness is so great and the correlation to aligning with non-climate priority leadership is so strong that you wind up in situations like we're in today, where we do not have a strong leadership basis for promoting climate action. So, which leads me to a conclusion. Decades of failure to ensure well-being appear to correlate with waning support we need for persistent and coherent climate action. And put another way, well-being now, in my mind, trumps climate as the greatest existential threat to the planet. Clearly, there's massive urgency for climate action, but we can't get there when you have such disparity in well-being that won't create a leadership that will take us there. So we can't ignore it if we're going to promote climate action. We have to really embrace this concept, is my conclusion and recommendation. So let's talk about listening-based climate action, where we get the same outcome but a different message. I think we can live with that. And what I mean by listening is not saying I'm going to impose my worldview. You have to believe the sky's falling. It's all human activity fault. Humans are to blame. Humans are horrible people. They don't do the right thing. And I'm going to ban you to do certain things. I'm going to regulate you and put tax burdens and do everything I can do on you to you embrace my worldview. It just doesn't work. So let's talk about what we do. First, we start by recognizing the link between homes and well-being, okay? Because my field is housing. That's a strong basis point for me. And if again, I start with this realization that we spend nearly 3/4 of our time in our homes where life happens, there's a huge link between homes and well-being. If people are there 3/4 of their life and we don't get homes that nurture well-being, they won't experience well-being. They won't vote for climate action. So it's a tremendous correlation between all these points I'm raising. So what is a low carbon home and why does it link to well-being? So to dive a little deeper, a low carbon home basically first optimizes the enclosure, and it does that with comprehensive building science. Then it optimizes the operation of the home by making it efficient and smart. It used to be efficiency was enough. That's not enough anymore. If you're not marrying efficiency to smart as well, smart home operation, you're just not building for the future. Then you have to optimize health, and that begins with indoor air quality. I'll submit there's a whole bunch we got to do about mitigating food deserts and educating people about diet. And there's a lot more to health than that, and creating communities with open spaces and where people engage socially and where there's activity. And there's so many things we need to do for health. But when it comes to the house where we're spending time, that starts with indoor air quality. And then on resilience, we have to optimize that by making homes ready for prevailing disaster risks. And we optimize the ever increasing water constraints by creating water efficient homes. And the outcome is wellness, financial wellness, because we have lower ownership costs. We maybe have to invest a little bit higher first cost, but our tremendous advantage financially occurs because of monthly cash flows from all the savings and extra value of the home. And then we optimize health by reducing health expenses, and we optimize future ready wellness, better protection by building homes that are ready for disasters, ready for water constraints, and ready for being smart. So these outcomes are all critical. And what's frustrating is we keep assigning zero value for them when that's the wrong answer. And so these homes deliver lower costs of construction because the enclosure, we can extract all sorts of cost savings. We build them smarter. We can mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems can be done for much lower costs in high performance homes. And then we have aforementioned lower cost of ownership, utility bills, maintenance, health expenses, water bills, insurance costs, the revenue from solar systems. Health is better. We enjoy living healthier lives. We experience superior protection, and we're ready for the future. Our homes are smart, disaster ready, and electric ready. And zero's the wrong answer. So I do back of the envelope calculations. If you read Housing 2.0, I do really kind of top of the envelope just analysis to come up with some basic numbers to get off zero. These are my answers. For instance, on health expenses, it's $40,000 over 30 years. And I get that by taking the annual health expenses out of pocket for the average household is somewhere around almost $900. I assume about a third of that can be saved with comprehensive indoor air quality improvements. And then I get the cash flow, amortize it over 30 years and calculate it. And it's $40,000, which is greater than the energy savings from the utility bills. And that's because the energy codes are getting so much better. But you see, these numbers are still really significant. And when you count them all up together, it's like $150,000 to $250,000 of cost advantage for a low carbon home that makes us financially well, makes us healthier in terms of wellness, and we're also better protected because our value and our safety are better positioned for the future risks that we're exposed to. So this is huge benefits, and it's massive to me that we'll assign zero value for all this benefit. So what do? So let's talk about listening-based climate actions. I'm going to recommend 3 buckets, again, just to start the conversation. 3 buckets of ideas. We want to message well-being versus carbon. Power messaging, coercive knowledge, and unforced errors are 3 things I want to talk about in terms of how we can do this. So in terms of explaining what a power message is, I love this example. If you've attended my workshops, and particularly the sales workshops, I use this all the time, but it's so powerful. It was really difficult to sell Patagonian toothfish. Sea merchants in the mid-'80s went down to Colombia or somewhere in South America, found this amazing fish with great texture, great color, great taste. It was just an amazing fish, and they brought it to America, and it just rotted on the shelves. For some reason, the American seafood eating public did not want toothfish. So I went back to the drawing board, so what do we do? And they thought about it, and they came up with a brilliant solution. a power message enhancement. They changed the name to Chilean sea bass. And just the name change, just using words that resonate, created such a demand for this fish, it was almost fished to extinction. They had to put all these controls and measures in place to protect the species from going extinct. I'm happy to report it's kind of rebounding quite a bit, but more important is the power of words to change behavior. And I look at our industry, I look at what we do and how we message, and we just think it's like scientists and researchers, and we want to just promote what we understand and not what will resonate and really cause behavior change with our audience. We just wanted to do it because we say you have to do it. So you should do an energy audit. But if I survey 1,000 Americans and ask, you want an audit, I'll get 1,000 rejections. No. I've done that survey myself with audiences all across the country for years. I ask how many people want to be audited. I don't get a single hand raised. Why, when words are free, would you choose a name for such a valuable service people should want on the most valuable asset they own, their homes, to ensure its wellness? Why would you call it an audit? You can call it anything you want. Words are free. And so I recommend calling it home wellness checkup. You're leveraging a term that already has value rather than using a term that Americans reject. This isn't hard. I call this kind of behavior change science. This isn't hard concepts. So home wellness checkup, we take our physical bodies in for checkups, our cars in for checkups, things we care about. We know it's important to have checkups. And I call it a home wellness checkup. Again, financial, health, ready for the future. This is so much more resonant than the term we're using, and it's no cost to do that. Similarly to the industry, I always try to say, why are we calling things by their technical function? A ventilation system is great. A house needs ventilation for dilution, so we get more fresh air in and we exhaust the stale air out. If I ask 1,000 Americans, how many of you think ventilation is important? Maybe I'll get a few percent saying yes, or 10%. If I ask Americans how many people think it's important to have fresh air in their homes, I'll get 100%. So why not call it a fresh air system? That's the simplicity of this first concept. I wanted to start easy because it's probably something we all can recognize we have to start doing. We have to listen and understand what people value. And when we have an asset, we have low carbon buildings that have so many benefits and that people want. Let's message to the benefit, not what we want them to understand. That's complex and hard to have any understanding about. So enough of that, but let me give you some basic framework or principles for messaging. One, it has to be short to optimize retention. Two, it has to be simple to optimize clarity. Three, it has to be emotional to optimize inspiration, particularly inspiration to change from what you're doing. And fourth, it has to be universal to optimize resonance. You can't have a name that people, half your audience already reject. And this is where the one where we fail the most. People have, half your audience in the country with anything that's named carbon, climate will reject it. Why would you go with those names? It's fine internally when you're doing planning and analysis and within your programs to understand and use those terms, but you have to recognize if you want your programs to have resonance and be embraced by your total audience that need to believe in your message, you want to filter your words, your message, to know it's universal. So let me give you examples. These are actual programs. I'm going to convert a non-listening program name to a listening-based program and just leverage this wellness connection between low carbon, zero carbon buildings and wellness. So an actual program is the White House National Climate Task Force. So I would just change it to the White House National Wellness Task Force. Doesn't cost me any more to use the word wellness than climate. So why not do it? HUD has a HUD Climate Action Plan. I would call it the HUD Wellness Action Plan. You kind of see how this is working. Massachusetts has the Massachusetts Climate Ready Housing Program. I want to pivot to the Massachusetts Enhanced Wellness Housing Program. A Harvard Radcliffe Institute Climate Change Initiative, Harvard Radcliffe Institute Wellness Initiative, And there's a research program, I forget who's running it, the Climate Resilient Housing Research Program. I want to call it the Disaster Resistant Housing Research Program. Pivot from names with substantial opposition to names based on universally desired outcomes. If 100% of Americans believe wellness is something we should all aspire to, but only 45% believe climate is, let's use the 100% term. That's all I'm asking. Next, concept, curse of knowledge. And this one will drive me crazy. I've been in federal government at EPA and DOE surrounded by researchers all my life. And they're the most brilliant, wonderful people. I'm so blessed to know them, but they will drive me mad with this curse of knowledge. When subject matter expertise makes it difficult to understand the perspective of those without the same knowledge. I'll give you an example of curse of knowledge in action. This is the National Fenestration Rating Council label for windows. It's not for the architect, it's not for the engineer, it's not for the designer. This is the label that goes on the window and it's shipped and it'll be on the home when the people go to see their home under construction. So this isn't for the engineer's education. They've already specified the window before they ever see this label, or the architect. So there's this label on the window. This is an opportunity to convey a product performance metric that inspires people, makes them feel good if they got a good window, or help them make a decision to buy a more low carbon product. And this has zero clarity, way too many metrics and no contrast. I can't, if I'm an average consumer, how do I know the window on the left is a basic Energy Star window and the window on the right is a triple glazed superior window? And all these metrics are completely different coefficients and factors that no home buyer would know about unless they were in the field. So for me, this is useless. So I get away from the curse of knowledge and say, I want to move people from double pane to triple pane window in colder climates, maybe climate zones 5 through 8, 6 through 8. And this is a label I put on the window. What about this? A double glazed window in a cold climate, it's a 10-year window. Within 10 years, it'll be obsolete. You know, we have the thin triple coming out, we have better technology, costs of energy are going up. People won't accept the amazing degradation on whole wall R value that windows provide. A window that's an Energy Star window may lose as much as 50 to 70% of the whole wall R value, depending how good a wall you build, where a triple glazed window will lose a fraction of that. You put all this money into an expensive wall, but you don't build it the right window. So a triple glazed window is a 50-year window. It will stand the test of time and be relevant for 50 years. Now, it's much easier for me to spend another $15,000, $18,000 for a triple glazed versus double glazed window package if I understand I'm getting 5x greater durability and persistence of that window. But it's very hard for me to invest another $18,000, $20,000 just looking at these two labels. We've got to make it easy for people to make choices that are smart for themselves so they recognize it's in their best interest. You want a 50-year window. It's going to be one of the biggest investments you make in your home. You get 5 times the relevant lifetime out of that choice. Again, getting out of the curse of knowledge and just thinking, what is emotional? You know, what is clear and understandable? What is contrast that will provide clarity? All these things have to be done. We cannot be inefficient in how we go to market with better climate solutions. And here's one that will really drive me nuts because these were so much part of my life when I was at DOE and EPA. On the left is a home energy score. On the right is the HERS score. Both rate performance of homes. First thing, neither one of these metrics have anything to do with each other. Why are there two different ways of measuring existing and new homes? That is already confusing to me as an architect, chief architect at the Department of Energy. And then I'm supposed to hope that a homeowner can look at either one of these labels and have even the beginning of an understanding of a concept of what is the value of a score and what it's going to mean to them. It's insanity. This is just not giving them any basis to understand the value and make the right decision. Yeah, you can spend billions and billions of dollars in education trying to get a homeowner to know that a home energy score of 8.4 is a lot better than one that's 5.9 or 6.4 and emotionally relate to that. What a huge task. And then in the home energy score, the higher the score, the more efficient it is, and the resident score, the lower the score, the more efficient it is. So they have nothing to do. Look at these labels and all the information. What a waste of a label. In contrast, you have assets that can be leveraged. You build on what is working rather than trying to fix what is broken if you want to scale climate action. This is such an important concept for change. We so much want to solve the problem. We think we need a way to have accurate measurements, and we come up with this. And what we need is a way to create people to make the right decision. Nobody wants a home with a 2-star label, a 1-star, even a 3-star label. They already emotionally react to star ratings. Why don't you leverage that? Why are you creating a whole new solution? When they see this label of home, they don't want a home to go to market. They plan to sell that has a low rating. They'll be motivated to make efficiency improvements. They want to buy a home that has a low star rating for anything. So this is just a freebie. It's out there in the market. And the stunning thing is the HERS rating score, when it was first introduced in the early 90s and mid 90s, was a 1 to 5-star rating, and then they got rid of it. The other option I like a lot is the one being used in Europe. It's the A through G rating, where what I love about this is everyone understands A through F. Everyone reacts emotionally to getting a C, a D, an F. We hate that when we're in school. We already have built in hardwired to emotionally go, I do not want that. If they get any assessment of their house that comes back as a D, an F, they hate that. They'll react emotionally. They'll do something about this. They'll take action. And we ignore it. Now, what I would do to build on the European experience is get rid of the E and the G. We don't need it. All these 5 tiers are all you need, A, B, C, D, F. We understand it, we'll react to it, we'll change our behavior to get that A or B. So you get where I'm going. This is the reason we have this is the curse of knowledge. And if we simply got away from ourselves and our engineering biases and just looked at the market, we would choose these kinds of solutions. We have to be better. Climate's too important. We're taking actions that are not getting the outcomes we need. Okay, now the third thing I want to talk about in the list I showed you is unforced errors. I play a lot of tennis, so I like this term because basically tennis, there's this unnecessary risk you take. When you go for a shot you don't need to go to. It's too close to the line and you miss, or you don't clear the net enough. Whatever it may be, you just hit a shot where you didn't need to hit that shot and you lost the point when you could have taken a shot with maybe a 70, 80% greater probability of success and be in the point and still have a chance to win. And so I really go crazy in unforced errors when we got to solve problem. It's a non-listening action problem. So I'll give you an example of climate policies that take unnecessary risk. Not always, sometimes they're the only option, but it's almost like if we want to do a program to get efficient homes, almost by default, we're always thinking rebates and tax subsidies, and we're always going to these regulations and codes. We're always going the path that is the least resonant with our audience. So there are 3 buckets here. I don't think we should take away freedoms except as the ultimate last resort. Bans, codes, regulations that are perceived to take away freedoms you don't want to do. 2, you don't want to do policies where you ignore true cost. I'm going to talk about the fossil fuel subsidy cost. And I always talk about ownership cost of housing, not the first cost, because ownership cost is what you should care about. That's what will either impose a financial burden or not living in that home. And then 3rd, imposing expensive tax burdens, taxes, rebates, subsidies, always conjures up negative emotions. So when you do these, you know that you're choosing to create a lot of opposition. Now, if you have no other choice, you do it. But I'm only asking is you make it the last resort, not the go-to first choice every time we need to take action. So let me give you examples. California has a zero energy code that requires every new homeowner for the privilege of buying a house to also purchase a micro power plant on their roof to produce power. And I go, that's just like overstepping. I think the alternative that's listening, that's not taking the state with the least affordable housing, sometimes by order of magnitude or 5x more expensive, the state with the most expensive housing, why don't we just have a wellness stretch code? And why don't we pair it with no cost incentives, like you get an expedited permit if your house is zero energy. And you give a builder an expedited permit and they'll jump. And are there ways we can just do other choices that won't offend people, but get us the same outcome? You know, it's the same, it's a different message, but the same outcome. So that's my question. And if there aren't, then you do the code. EV regulation, again, in California, all vehicles have to be electric vehicles by 2035, whatever the regulation is. What you do is you educate to the business case. In this case, electric vehicles to me are incredibly more superior user experience. You know, I can charge them at home. I don't have to go to gas stations anymore. They're quieter. They have amazing comfort and so many quiet benefits. You know, we can just, people will want cars if they just drive in them. And we can create other incentives that are not regulations to get people to buy electric cars. The reason you see resource efficient concrete foundations was I was against regulations that would block concrete from being used. I think we can educate people to use, for instance, precast concrete foundations, save 70% of the concrete. Why not just educate on the business case for that? A natural gas cooking ban got a lot of bad press because it's obvious. You know, you just take away a freedom. It's a stupid, unforced error. You don't need to go after gas cooking. It's such a small part of the fossil fuel consumption. We can just use voluntary labels to translate a far superior experience. You want to use induction cooktops because they're faster, better, safer, and more healthy. And just have a label. You look at the power of organic as a label on food to get people who are looking for a healthier choice. And we spend $55 billion a year on organic food just because of that label. I know we can get people to induction cooktops. It's an amazing, superior experience. We just need to leverage that experience. Clean technology subsidy, again, I'm going to recommend something called ensuring free markets with fair pricing of energy, and more about that in a second. And the 45L tax credit rebate, I think we can do more efficient government solutions. I'm going to talk about a wellness mortgage instead of the mortgage interest deduction. These are the two I'm going to spend most time on unforced errors. I'm going to talk about moving to fair pricing of energy and a wellness mortgage as 10x more efficient government. So let's go there. So first unforced error solution for ensuring a free market is something I call fair energy pricing. All I'm asking the world to do is integrate all the fossil fuel subsidy impacts into the cost of energy. Now, asking for a subsidy for renewables is like offending huge amount of decision makers in Congress and the public, whereas I'm saying I just want fair pricing. I want all energy to be priced on a common basis that all the costs are accounted for. Now, how do you object to that concept? It's a way you ensure a free market. When you distort market, if you don't do that, you have huge taxpayer costs being imposed. You're distorting the free market because you're eliminating a level playing field. You're suppressing innovation because lower cost innovations are not going to market when there's unfair pricing that unfairly prioritizes fossil fuels. And the bottom line is you're reducing wellness for all Americans when you don't get the lowest cost and the healthiest and the least environmentally damaging choices. So this is just all I'm asking for. Can we have free energy pricing? I don't care about subsidies. I don't care how we get there. I just want free energy, fair pricing where all costs are accounted for. And boy, the costs in fossil fuel are huge. The oil hidden military costs, for instance, just the price of the Iraq war, which has a strong correlation to our oil interest in the region, has been estimated at $4 to $6 trillion. as a final price tag for both the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. And that amounts to about $16,000 to $24,000 for every American taxpayer, and the largest amounts for future health care of aging veterans. But this was a Harvard Kennedy School study. $4 to $6 trillion is not a small number. So we can debate, argue the correlation to the oil interests in the region and get either full accounting for that value or a portion. And the other military cost that's hidden is the amazing cost you pay to protect the shipping routes for oil. That was estimated as $8 trillion to protect the US shipping in the Straits of Hormuz since 1976. $8 trillion, that's a crazy number. And this map shows the choke points and the oil routes, and then our military presence basically is a massive expense to protect those high-risk locations where most oil is being shipped. And then there are the cleanup costs. You know, this is just one event, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, now I guess the Gulf of America, was $62 billion. And I don't even think that accounts for all the effects on livelihoods, on economic activity, on persisting environmental damage that will happen for decades and decades and decades. Just the price tag so far that's put in that $62 billion. The Valdez was one of the next biggest spills that was most famous in Alaska. That was $7 billion to clean up the Exxon Valdez. And again, I keep reading stories about persistence of expenses and more impacts that just weren't accounted for in that total. And then our energy security tied to oil. We have so much dependence on having oil available. We have to have this big strategic petroleum reserve. We spent about $228 billion in 2022 to ensure our energy and economic security tied to the dependence on petroleum and crude oil. So that's a huge expense. And it's just paid by the taxpayer and never shows up at the oil pump. And of course, you can also imagine the environmental damage that's not accounted for where all the storage of the oil takes place. And then the other environmental aspect of oil is the pipeline spill cost. There are 300 plus oil and gas pipeline spills per year, and they have a devastating toll on people and wildlife. So those costs never show up at the gas pump and or buy natural gas at our homes and buildings. And then the coal mine cleanup costs are huge as well, $7.5 to $10 billion nearly price tag for cleanup and reclamation, just due to mountaintop removal and other coal mines, covering a huge swath of the eastern states, 7 eastern states. And a lot of studies have been done to count the numbers. There's a lot of good analysis done that we can refer to, but this is a huge price tag. And then there's the healthcare costs. One study puts it at $820 billion per year of health costs attributed to fossil fuel generated air pollution and climate change. And most significantly, that burden falls heaviest on vulnerable low-income communities. So this is done by the National Resource Defense Council. If the number is half or a third of this number, it's a huge number. And then there's the economic impacts, the return on investment in terms of jobs and growth to the economy. One study done at the Department of Energy was nearly 3 times more jobs created by clean energy than fossil fuels per $1 million invested. So that's people's livelihoods again, and more work and better economic growth, more tax revenue. So many things happen from these investments. The return on investment is so much greater. Where is that counted for in the economic decisions to support one fuel over another? And then you have unfair energy pricing. You'll have a lot of just narrow partial look at the cost of, let's say, subsidies, federal subsidies and incentives, and observe that 85% of federal subsidies went to renewable and energy conservation and energy sufficiency in 2022. This is done by the USEIA, and you tabulate these numbers, but you go, yeah, but that's just the subsidies we're paying, and this is where you get in trouble with subsidies without including all costs. When you include environmental impacts, foregone consumption taxes, it's closer to $7 trillion total subsidies for fossil fuels. And you see the explicit subsidies in dark red are a small portion of what's really going on in terms of subsidizing fossil fuel. So all we're asking for is fair pricing. We think all the costs incurred by taxpayers, the economy, health expenses, we think all those should be accounted for. And I think we're researching the wrong thing. We're just researching innovations to reduce carbon when we should be spending as much effort or a large effort researching these numbers and getting consensus on the actual costs associated for all the energy choices we make. 5 trillion externality costs just for these environmental and foregone consumption taxes. So I did some back of the envelope calculations. I looked at the global consumption of electricity and gasoline, and I divided up that 5 trillion and I divided it appropriately into electricity and gasoline. And the basic subsidies of fossil fuel add up to 20 cents a kilowatt hour for fossil fuel generated electricity and $3 a gallon for gasoline. So you wonder why fuel is $6 a gallon in Europe and $3 a gallon in the US. I might surmise it's because Europe is pricing gasoline to account for all the costs and subsidies and has a fair free market price of fair energy pricing for free markets. That's why they do it, would be my answer. So the idea is a pivot to tax policies and incentives that optimize wellness for all Americans. And you can't do that if you hide 20 cents a kilowatt hour of real cost, $3 a gallon of real cost for electricity and gasoline from fossil fuels. So the answer is figure it out, solve the problem, come up with a way. It means it's a carbon tax, do it, but don't call it a carbon tax. Call it a free market adjustment. And if it's a regulation that's all electric cars, then call it a free market correction for the maximum wellness for all Americans. So I don't know the answers for everything. I just know this needs to be accounted for. Okay, the other second one I want to talk about was this wellness mortgage. I think we have to be more efficient in government. I've worked in government for 27 years, and I think we're foolish if we deny government is grossly inefficient. Because Americans know. Everyone has gone to the Department of Motor Vehicles, got a building permit, got a passport, went through immigration. Anyone who's done anything with the government knows, by experience, just how inefficient the government is. Why do we deliver mail 6 times a week to Americans when we get 90% less communication via mail or 80% less communication versus mail? Can I get mail every other day? Can I just cut mail service in half? I mean, I don't understand it. What is so urgent that mail has to come to me every day now except for Sunday? But we do it. We institutionalize 6 days a week of mail, and that's how government operates. Climate action can't be that inefficient. If we're asking buildings and homes to go to zero energy by being maximum efficient and maximum lean, I think climate action needs to walk the talk. It needs to be maximum efficient programs and maximum lean with least waste programs, just like we're asking the buildings. And I think we argue that this, asking government to be more efficient is just a political thing. It's not. Everyone knows government's not efficient, and we've got to be more efficient. I spent 10 years at DOE devoting my life to making DOE programs more efficient. That's all I wanted to do with my life. I refused to run the national research program. I just wanted to take our assets and repurpose, and I got them to be more efficient and lean. And about 6 or 7 initiatives, I found 5 to 10x cost savings and impact increases just by doing them more efficient. That's what I did for 10 years at DOE. No one knew. And then when I left, I don't think anyone's continued it, because that was just a big opportunity for me to leverage my success with Energy Star that let me do what I wanted to do when I got there. So let me suggest one option I actually submitted when I was at DOE that got laughed at, which is a wellness mortgage that converts the mortgage interest deduction from a huge liability to a massive revenue generating asset that improves wellness for all Americans. I'm talking 100x difference we'll get to. And that's why you can't do it, because it's, that this is the way it is. We've institutionalized the mortgage interest deduction. Let's not talk about changing it. And I don't believe any problem is too big to fix. I know we can do it, but let me show you why. First, mortgage interest deduction is a huge chunk of the $1 trillion lost revenue for exemptions, deductions, credits, and loopholes known collectively as tax expenditures. And there's the mortgage interest deduction. It's the second highest tax expenditure. So these numbers are much greater. These are from 2011 when I can get the data. But the important point is just, this is a huge tax expense, the mortgage interest deduction. And I want to convert it from a liability to an asset. And one of the reasons I want to do that is it's so income regressive. In 2009, I was able to graphically figure that it was about 80+% tax benefits go to households with income over $100,000. Now, fast forward 16 years later to 2025, I'm going to guess 80+% go to households with incomes over 150,000 as a guess right now. It's amazingly regressive. It goes mostly to people with a higher income households, which is fine. I mean, except for it, we should expect something in return. It shouldn't just be an entitlement for rich households. Now, the housing industry says it's a basis for them to sell homes and people to buy homes. Again, everyone's so worried about losing the market. We don't have nearly enough housing. We have such a housing shortage in the country. And I think we can do this by improving the financial burden rather than worsening the financial burden of every household. And how do we do that? Well, we leverage existing assets. We have zero energy ready home, substantially improves home's wellness, financial, health, and makes them ready for the future. And we have the home energy score, the aforementioned home energy score that I'm not a fan of. At least there's a tool that's out there we can use to ensure we improve existing homes 15, 20, 30% or more efficient, again, for better financial, health, and future readiness, wellness benefits. And the opportunity is great because less than 15% of the 1 million new homes built per year are built to zero ready. Well, less than 5% are built to zero ready. That was Energy Star and zero ready number 15. And less than 3% of the homes in the country, the 100 million homes, have been improved with home upgrades. So like huge opportunity, and we have tremendous assets. So what do? It's a simple policy change. Convert the mortgage interest deduction by just adding a prerequisite to qualify for the now wellness mortgage deduction. Your new home, if you purchase a brand newly constructed home, has to be certified as zero energy ready, and insist market makes ready energy efficient mortgages so that there's zero extra down payment and zero extra income required to buy those properties. And remember, the incremental cost for the energy improvements funded by the energy efficient mortgage results in a monthly additional mortgage that's less than the monthly energy savings typically. So no extra less financial burden. On existing homes, you have to have a minimum home energy score, let's say it's 7.5, it would be a guess of a number, achieved within a year, and again, with energy improvement mortgages mandated to be in a market by FHA and USDA mortgages and others. An energy improvement mortgage is the same as an energy efficient mortgage for new homes. You separately fund within the mortgage the improvements to make the house high performance and The monthly incremental costs should be easily matched by the energy savings from the improvements. So again, less financial burden, more protection, house ready for the future, healthier home. And to make sure low-income homes are not left out, all the revenue that you generate from this program, because a big chunk of homes will not get, let's say, the mortgage interest deduction it normally would, apply that to making high performance, affordable, attainable housing. What I love about government programs that I think is really important is that they should reward good behavior. Tie the existing tax benefit to purchasing homes that optimize wellness for the home buyer, for the community, for the country, for all the planet. And that's just a simple policy change. I know we could do it. So I had this guy from McKinsey & Company on loan to BTO, Building Technology Office at DOE. And I went to management and stole him for 2 weeks. They let me have him for 2 weeks. This guy was a genius. And I asked him to create a spreadsheet model so we can calculate all the impacts of this kind of wellness mortgage, assuming a paltry market penetration in 10 or 12 years of 33% of homes. The mortgage interest deduction is something like $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year of tax benefit per homeowner. No homeowner, very few homeowners would not do the energy zero-ready home or the home improvements. Most people want those improvements. They want better windows. They want more insulation in existing homes. So I think the 33% market penetration we assumed in 10 or 12 years, I forget the number, was way understated. But with that understated assumption, we calculated, one, we would get to a full market transformation 3 times faster than we would with the existing programs we had, like, again, 45L and others. And we'd have $90 to $270 billion of construction revenue per year, 120,000 to 360,000 persistent new jobs in persistent green technology jobs that couldn't be outsourced, and 2,800 to 8,400 million metric tons of carbon emissions reduced. And cheaper, we would eliminate $4 billion that we normally would be spending on 45L tax expenditure. We would generate $350 billion to $1 trillion of utility bill savings, and $1.5 to $4.5 trillion of additional tax revenue. And the big deadbands are because we had some widely varying assumptions. But that's not important. It's the scale of the numbers we're talking about. This was a quick 2-week model we put together. And without this genius from McKinsey, it never could have been done. But these are the outcomes. And the key thing is the wellness mortgage efficiency in terms of government program compared to the 45L rebate government program is 100 times less tax expenditure and 10 times greater impact. Carbon, savings, energy security, jobs. This is just doing what we're asking buildings to do. We're being ultra efficient and ultra lean and using the assets we have, the certifications, a tax policy that is income regressive, and we're repurposing it for all this benefit. This is how I operated when I was at DOE. All I cared about was my grand experiment. Could I repurpose programs to be more efficient, more lean, and get 10 times impacts, 10 times greater impacts? Okay, you kind of get where I'm going. I want to be smarter, being successful, getting climate actions we want. So some final thoughts about rethinking climate action. The most invasive species, when I go do research, I can come up with a whole array of different lists. Here's one. This is a typical list of the most invasive species on the planet. Water hyacinth, northern Pacific sea star, small Indian mongoose, Asian longhorn beetle, zebra mussel, Asian carp, cane toad, European starling, kudzu, which I hate, and the common rabbit. Okay, this is just one list. What's stunning is what's missing from this list. Those pesky humans. Okay, we're approaching 9 billion of us by 2050, 11 billion by 2100, and the waste in carbon that we're producing is shocking the planet. And that's only the partial story. the soil erosion, the trash waste, the sewage waste, the plastics waste, the forever chemical waste, spent nuclear fuel waste, e-waste, CFCs, I can keep going on. The waste that 9, 10, 11 billion humans on the planet are producing is getting untenable. This is the Pacific garbage patch. Basically, it's supposed to be the size of Texas. It's all the plastic just because of currents coagulating one large area, decomposing into microplastic particles that then get eaten by the fish. If I recall the statistic correctly, something like 40% of all fish that we are getting from the sea for seafood contain plastic particles in the tissues that we eat. It's just stunning how our activity and our waste is visually just exploding at us in so many ways on the planet. This one really stuns me. This is a remote Pacific island with 38 million pieces of trash and 0 inhabitants. We can't even keep the trash we're producing from floating up onto these remote islands. It's just insanity, just how invasive the species we are, okay? And we just have to realize that. So the good news, it's not like humans are bad. We have this ingenuity where we can completely change these incredible Earth system trends, hard trends, and get them back in control. So stratospheric ozone is one of the greatest examples. We turned it around. We collectively joined forces as a global human intervention to reduce emissions into the atmosphere, aerosols, and we reversed stratospheric ozone. It can be done, but we just have to be smarter. So, yes, we can. But my last word is it all begins with listening to truly know people lagging in well-being. Again, the greatest existential threat is the exponentially growing gaps in well-being from haves and have-nots. And then seeing these people deeply, and in turn, hopefully being deeply seen by them. And the key part is through words and actions that make a difference in their lives. We can't keep saying we're doing wonderful things for you, and they don't see any difference in their lives, which is what we've been doing for half a century. We keep telling them, we're helping you, we're helping you, we're helping you, but what are we really doing? A great reference on how to be really good at listening and seeing deeply and being deeply seen is David Brooks' book, How to Know a Person, the Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. Not a great book, but an important book. And this morning I saw a quote from Amory Levins that I loved. You can't depress people into action. You shouldn't be depressed. You should be focused on building what is working, not trying to fix what is broken. You'll be exhausted. The challenge is so daunting, you won't know what to do. But when you grab hold of things that are working, and there's so many things that are working, we can transform the planet. So I leave you with that thought. I hope I didn't offend anyone. This is just me trying to share a lot of experience and learning and just passion about what I do. And I enjoy working with so many of you that listen to these seminars. I hope some of this makes sense. Mike, back to you.
All right, thank you, Sam. And if anyone does have any questions, please send them in via the questions box or the chat box over on the GoToWebinar control panel. I'm going to throw one out there for you, Sam. I think the well-being index, what a fascinating metric for someone to kind of look at and come up with. Who is it that produces that?
Let me go back and pull the reference up. Excuse me, folks. I'm going to. Just skip me. Who was the? So this was done by the Measure of America of the Social Science Research Council, a new group to me. This came out in 2018. And this was a human development index that basically kind of curated all three individual components, life expectancy, education, median income, into a single index called the Human Development Index. But it's the measure of America of the Social Science Research Council.
Yeah, I mean, just what a fascinating thing to look at, and it really does paint quite a picture, and tells a story of kind of how that has then played out. I think your hypothesis is very interesting. You know, there were a lot of people who were stunned, not just at the election results, but now stunned at some of the dismantling of some of the measures that had been in place for energy efficiency, for sustainability, and it left me wondering throughout the winter, you know, why did we go this way? Why did this happen? And I just find it to be an incredibly interesting hypothesis of that correlation of well-being, what's happening in your face daily versus a larger, you know, systemic issue like the planet's climate system, which seems, you know, so far out of reach, and it's so slow of changing, and you know, it's different than not that the two are the same, but it's very different than a car accident, right? Oh, it happens, it's right there. Oh my gosh, it was very traumatic. This is very slow moving, and it's just very hard to perceive it.
Even lying in a tub with the spout dripping one drop at a time, you'll eventually drown if you don't get out of the tub and you're lying down in the tub and it's stopped.
Yeah, that's a good analogy right there.
Drip, 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 drip.
Yep. Well, I don't see any other questions other than mine, and you know, you and I could sit here and talk all day, but I want to leave some for the other seminars that we're going to be having, because while this was the first one of 2025, there's going to be 10 more to enjoy and to learn from throughout 2025. We hope that you will join us. Our next seminar is actually going to take place on February 13th. It's 3 weeks from today, and it's going to start at 12 p.m. Eastern time, so a little bit of a different start time. We're going to be discussing microgrids with Sid Kitson of Babcock Ranch. So I hope you're able to join us for that.
Let me just add, that one is, we're locking in, that's a tentative next session. We're still working on logistics, trying to get Sid lined up and get on his schedule. So we'll I'll just share that we're still in works getting all the details.
Okay. Well, there's my plea to Sid. Please, Sid, join us on February 13th at 2 p.m. And if for some reason we're able to get Sid, but at a different date and time, we will definitely let you know. So stay tuned to your inboxes for a registration link, which will obviously have a date and a time for that webinar. So thank you all for attending today. Thank you to Panasonic Healthy Indoor Living Solutions and LG for their generous sponsorships of the Housing 2.0 program. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and take care, everyone. So long.